A couple of weeks ago, I was called up to do a topic by our wonderful Jeff Burns, and he said to me, I want you to tell us about how we can express the senses when we give our speeches. And I like to flatter myself by thinking I did okay, got through that topic just fine. But afterwards, I thought to myself, I kind of kicked myself a little bit. I thought, there's so much that we can delve into on this subject, and there's so much that we have to learn about expressing the senses and using the senses to convey meaning when we speak, that this topic really deserves an entire speech. So we talk a lot about sight and sound. Today we're going to kind of go through touch, taste, and smell, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is how you can use sight and sound to convey the other three senses. Sound like a plan? All right. So starting with touch. The first thing I would challenge everybody to do is really to use sight to convey touch. So when I gave my topic, I showed you guys the example of all of you just experienced touch just by watching what I did with my hands, right? But that touch turns into something very different if I make one little change. Rather than going like this, if I take my fingers, curl them, and scratch them against my palm. Do you see how that touch was a very different experience? This is very gentle. You're using the palm of your hand, the pads of your fingers, you're moving very slowly, and you can express that with something like the feeling of somebody kind of rubbing your back as they give you a hug while you're crying over something terrible that's happened to you. Everybody's had that experience. Don't you men in here deny that that's ever happened to you. But if you're going to scratch your palm, you've just expressed the feeling of having chicken pox or having lice, or even using it as a metaphor for a really irritating person. Everyone kind of knows what that touch feels like. So you can use sight, little things like that, and this is just an example. There's lots of ways that you can do that to express the sensation of touch in order to convey more meaning in your speeches. Now, similar to that, there's also things like, if I were to kind of punch my hand, move off, it would be like that sensation of someone punching you on the shoulder saying, good job. And that punch is very different than if I were to go, like kickboxing. All of a sudden it's like, you stay away from me, you bring it on. Aggressive versus, good job, gentle, friendly. So very different things. I would also challenge you guys to use sound effects. If I were to have punched my hand and gone, kapow, come on, that's actually really fun, has a great experience, and it also, there brings some humor into this too. So fun way to do that. I do also want to encourage you guys, though, to use descriptive language to convey all the senses, and touch is one of those. So I want you guys to humor me for a moment, and I want you to close your eyes. And what I want you to do is not just to listen to what I'm saying, eyes closed, do it, close, good. I want you to try and experience the senses that I'm going to give you, the sensations that you're going to hear from me. Sinking into a bath that is slightly too hot for comfort. Running your fingers over crushed velvet. Picking up a massive bunch of crushed fallen leaves without any garden gloves on. Okay, open your eyes. This is going to blow your minds, because it blows my mind. You all have a shared experience of something that has never happened. Like, oh my gosh, mind blown. Like, you now have a collective memory because you all just sat there and experienced the same sensation together, even if that experience never happened. And what's so powerful about that is now all of you are going to leave this room with that collective memory. And that's what kind of makes the meaning of what you say last longer than when you're in this room and when you say it, right? Okay, that's touch. Taste. So taste, this is such a tricky sense because it's so incredibly subjective. Not only because we experience different foods across cultures, but also because everyone has different taste buds. We all kind of have a different understanding of different foods, a different experience with even the same foods. So oftentimes what we'll see when we give speeches about food is people will use pictures. And that's really cool, they're really colorful, they're really fun, but it doesn't cross that issue of you having that subjective experience with food, right? So that's why this descriptive language is so important. I want you guys to watch me do something. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but in two very different ways. So my mom made this bowl of warm rice pudding, and then she sprinkled this really spicy cinnamon on top, and then I sat it down, and I went to take a spoon of it, and when I put it in my mouth, the first thing that happened was that cinnamon coated my entire mouth, and it just sunk down and was, oh. That's one way, right? Or I could say it like, oh, she made this bowl of rice pudding. It was warm, and then she sprinkled spicy cinnamon on top of it, and I sat it down, and I went to go eat it, and when I ate it, the cinnamon just coated my mouth, and it was, Do you see how you just had a very different experience when it comes to eating the exact same thing and hearing the exact same words, because not just of the descriptive language, but because the connotation of the language was different. That's how you kind of overcome different aspects of that subjectivity that comes along with things like taste. Maybe somebody doesn't like rice pudding, but they're still going to understand that I do or I don't because of the connotation of the language that I use. So then the other thing I really want to challenge you guys to do, and I know this isn't easy, is to use your physicality as well as just images on the screen to paint a picture for us of what that food looks like. So it's not just going to be, I'm telling you about sitting there eating rice pudding and sprinkling cinnamon on top and eating the rice pudding. It's, I've created a bowl for you. I'm setting the bowl in front of you. I'm taking a spoon, I am scooping up the rice pudding, and I'm putting it in my mouth so that you experience the process of eating it right along with me. Not everything has to be visual poetry here, but we're all here to challenge ourselves to be better speakers and to really see what it is that we can do. And a big part of that is using your body to paint a picture as opposed to just using your words to tell a story, right? Okay, last thing we're gonna talk about is smell. And like taste, smell is very subjective as well. I'm gonna have a very different experience amongst all of you if I were to say, envision the smell of lavender versus envision the smell of roses or envision the smell of honeysuckle, because some people like those things and some people don't. There's just a different experience that comes with it. But again, that's where that connotation of language comes in. If I say, I think the smell of roses smells like my grandma's essential oils collection, which I do, that's going to give you a very different sense. Maybe you love the smell of roses, but you can at least understand where I'm coming from, and it gives you kind of that shared understanding with me of what I want you to experience, right? I do want you guys to give me just a couple more seconds of your time with your eyes closed, because I think this is a really fun activity, this whole shared experience thing. I want you to picture this smell in your head and let yourself experience it. Fresh cut grass on a hot day. Dirty men's size 11 football cleats. The first whiff when you open a brand new bag of Lay's potato chips. Okay, open your eyes. Tell me this is not the coolest thing in the world. You guys are all gonna leave either hankering for Lay's potato chips or never wanting to smell a rose ever again. So the point that I wanted to get across with this is this really important element of making sure your audience leaves the room with this shared experience. Because what you're doing with this is you're creating common ground, you're bringing people together. Even if these things were not real, they're still experiences that people have had together. And they make what you say and your message from your speech that much more powerful, because it's not just about what you say, it's about what people experience while you're saying it. So thank you all very much for your time today. I hope this was helpful.